Hello, everyone, and welcome to Shamanic Learning. My name is Eleni,
And I'm Tina.
and we are shamanic practitioners, and we love to talk all things spirit guides and power animals and all the helping spirits. This episode, we're just going to be talking about our power animal journey, what power animals are, and maybe the difference between what somebody would think of as a spirit guide versus more specifically what a power animal is. So, all that said, I know that, some shamanic practitioners keep their power animals secret or very close to their heart. They don't talk a lot about them, and some don't mind sharing a little bit more. And I know that that's part of the power animal's preference. But Tina, can you share a little bit about what even a power animal is if no one's ever heard of that before?
So yeah, a power animal is a spirit guide. Um, sorry, I can't get comfortable. Um, that is basically with you all the time, whether you see them, know they're there, whatever. But shamanically, we always make sure we have a power animal with us when we journey or when we do spiritual work. They're there to protect us and guide us. Um, and oftentimes, when you have a power animal, um, their traits are traits that either support you or traits that you need. Um, or something along that line. So yeah, and you can have many. You can have like a primary, which is what I have. I have a primary, and then I have a bunch of other power animals for different things. Um, so I have like a shadowland animal, and I have a an upper world animal and a middle world animal, and like so, you know, there's different support for different places based on the need.
Hmm. Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
Yeah. So I think when you're starting your shamanic journey, you generally will get like one archetype or one power animal to start really focusing on. And the vernacular in the spiritual community is usually a spirit guide. However, I think shamanically, why we call it a power animal is because we are working specifically with that archetype's powers, right? And that can show up differently for people, but in general, like the archetype of that animal is coming to you specifically at a certain time to help you integrate certain lessons or powers or, you know, there to kind of assist you on that aspect of your journey. Some people have the same power animal for many, many, many years, and some will work with that power animal for years or for amount of time and then integrate that lesson and that archetypal energy. And then they'll get another power animal that will be like the main guide. And like Tina was saying, you can have different power animals for different things that you do or spaces that you work in. And I think it also depends on probably like the cosmology of where people are working. So we work within the Andean medicine, and so there's different power animals that are given to just the specific worlds, like the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world. And there's also different guides for that, but we also have our very specific ones that are for us in our specific journey, which will look different for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. And where most people have a real-ish type animal, um, not they don't all look like that. Mine is like this animated part lion, part bird creature, um,
Hmm.
that it took me almost a year to connect with. I was given power animals by my teacher when I went through the medicine wheel because I just could not make that connection. And but now that he's there all the time and kind of sits on my shoulder, and they can change um their own look. So sometimes he's more lion or more bird. Sometimes he grows real big, and it just depends on the purpose of what we're doing. I think a lot of people kind of have that experience where their power animal sprouts wings or whatever based on what the need is. Um,
Hmm.
they are beings of everything, right? So yes, they hold this energy of their animal, but they, you know, they can do what we need
They
them
can
to do.
shape shift. Yeah. I think some like focus on shape shifting, and then I think other power animals, like for me, I feel like I have one main one. And then if I'm doing something else, there's like other versions of that
Oh,
animal that come in, but it's not specifically her. And they bring like a different energy or a different medicine. But I've also heard that too, like when you're working in the different realms, like the lower world, and then you go up to the middle world, if you're still working with that same power animal, sometimes they shapeshift into something else because they're working in a different dimension. So yeah. And I would say, the broader scheme and landscape of helping spirits is that we're not, bound to one type of thing. Many people have different helping spirits, and I think whatever belief systems and practices one has, that will inform their helping spirit. So, for example, if somebody works a lot with like the archangels, then that kind of angelic energy will be around them more frequently. And I would say that, for me at least, there's a kind of a mix between all the different modalities that I work within. So I'm not like super hyper focused on just one, but I do know the benefit of really honing a relationship with one, like one deity or one power animal. And I think if you're just starting out, that's really, really helpful to just focus.
I agree. Yeah. I actually have a ton. My spirit team is excessive, and that can be overwhelming sometimes. So
Yeah.
when I practice, yes, Dan is almost always here, but there's other spirit guides present, and I always have to ask, like, okay, which one or two of you are going to step up? Like, I don't need everybody here,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
that can be cluttering. Um,
Yeah, I think it's important because I think the clarity of a relationship, just like, a friendship or any type of relationship, like the more you practice that reciprocity, like the deeper it can go.
mhm.
And so, yeah, yeah, I feel like I like revisiting and focusing and honing in on like certain relationships during certain times with certain guides. So,
Well,
yeah.
I have a question for you because my clients ask all the time.
Yeah.
How do I get a spirit guide or a power animal?
Mm. Well, there's obviously different approaches, but Tina and I teach shamanic workshops, and one of them is called the Intro to Shamanic Journeying. And this method is that we teach how to go down into the shamanic lower world, which would be like the deeper aspects of your psyche and your unconscious mind, and to connect there with a power animal. And so if somebody's never been to the lower world before and this is their first taste of all this, I think it can be, sometimes you don't get anything. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you get to this space, you see a landscape, but you don't connect with anything. I've also had people say they see a ton of different animals and they couldn't land on one. And what I say to that is just, keep working on it. And if it's not in that single journey, it may be in the next. And then if you're working with a practitioner or a teacher that could help like hold that container for you to really like focus and hone in. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to add to that too that like, again, I struggled with journeying at the beginning of my journey with
Mhm.
shamanism. And because of that, mine didn't actually come to me in a journey. Mine came to me in a dream.
Mm,
which is a similar space, right? I mean,
right.
it's an unintentional journey space. And so yeah, so Dan came to me in a dream, and but
Love
I
it.
I knew as soon as I saw him. And so yeah, I mean, with that said, your intuition is super important here. Like, if
Absolutely.
now with that said, I have a lot of spirit animals as well. So
Hmm.
should we talk about the difference between a power animal and a spirit animal?
Yeah.
For me, the way I see it, a spirit animal is bringing you the energy of that being when you need it, right? So, um, I have an affinity with dragonflies. And so, they're bringing me a certain energy when I see them, whether it's a reminder to have that energy or they actually bring it, whatever. I apologize for the dogs. Um, and so, if you're constantly seeing an animal that maybe isn't a normal animal for you to be seeing, that's a message usually. When a particular um, insect is hanging out in your house or near your house, you may want to look into that spiritual meaning and what does that mean? If it's ants, are you looking for community? Are you
Mm,
looking for more people to be working with you? Those kinds of energy. So that's how I see like a spirit animal versus a power animal that's really there for protection and
hmm.
guidance.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good distinction. Like when you're seeing these synchronicities or symbols in your awareness, like your conscious reality, then it is speaking to you. And I do think it's helpful to look up meanings, but at the same time, what I know about that is that, like, if let's say you see like a sticker of a deer, and then you see a deer statue somewhere, and you're like, deer is in my field. And then you go look up the meaning of deer, there's going to be like 5 million meanings that all are different. So
Right.
if you're
Go with
using
your gut.
that method, then just pick and choose what resonates with you. Um, or you could even go a step beyond and kind of sit and meditate with the meaning of deer and see what you hear or sense about that that's connected for you, like to you. But usually I mean, and I do that too. Like I want to know immediately. And
Right.
but I have discernment on like what it means for me because you'll find
Yeah.
every meaning under the sun for
Yeah.
everything, you know.
Yeah, when I do that, because I used to just randomly pick one, and now I actually go in with an intention. So I like before I even put it into the computer, I'm like, okay, my intention is to know what this means to me. Show me an
Right.
article where it'll tell me what I need to know. And then
Hmm.
it seems to pull up the article that makes the most sense to me. I don't even look past the first one. Like I've asked it to give me one. It's the first one. And usually my message is in there. But yeah, I mean, you want to go with your gut. If you're
Hmm.
seeing lions everywhere, what does a lion mean to you? Like that's,
Hmm.
what's your interpretation of the energy of a lion or of a mouse or whatever it is? What is that energy? And don't
Hmm.
assume because you're seeing something you don't like that it's a negative energy, right? Because
Oh yeah.
Spider and I have had this relationship for years where, okay, I was terrified of spiders for most of my life. So when I see spiders, I'm always like, but they're actually a very positive energy for me when I
Hmm.
see them. So that, flipped the switch in my brain to, oh, there's a message here that I need to pay attention to,
Yeah.
versus, you know, abject terror. Um,
Which is, our own like filter of what certain things mean
right.
anyway. Yeah. And
Exactly.
I think that goes with, if you're doing oracle readings or whatever, it's the same thing. Like, let's say you're doing like, you have like an animal oracle that you're working with, and you get, the mouse card, like you said. And I just off the top of my head, I know the mouse card in my deck means it says tend to the small things, because they're little and they just do all the things. So I do like take that into consideration and think of that as like an archetypal energy. And then, like you said, but what does that mean for me specifically? And wasp spirit is actually in that deck as well. And I have this negative association with wasp spirit because it's the message is sometimes life stings, but what I'm trying to kind of reorient my um just like way of interpreting any type of oracle message that deem as like negative, like or something bad is coming, is I've never actually been able to predict the exact way that something like that was going to plan out. Like I'd always think of all the worst case scenarios and then it was something completely different. So when I see those type of cards, like, oh, there's conflict coming up or something like that, I actually am like, we'll see. I don't know. I have no clue. And that's like the beauty of that is instead of trying to control, like, well, what does this mean? We'll just see what happens. And yeah, it's kind of like a healing of that control mechanism, which can be what divination sometimes becomes when we are like really hyper focused on getting a particular message. It's like that's not really we can't control our divination practice in the way that it's going to give you the message, but how you receive
Mhm.
it and what it is that you can't control. Well, yeah, you know what I mean. I don't know if I said that right,
I know
but
what you mean.
you know what I mean. You can
I know you well
control,
enough
but
to know what you mean.
and if you don't know what I mean, oh well, that was confusing.
Then go do some divination, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, my point is that with divination, you can keep doing a reading over and over and over, asking the same question, wanting a different answer. Spirit is going to give you the answer that you need, not the answer that you want, right? So that's the same
Yes.
with like if
Well,
wasp spirit keeps coming up,
right.
it's like,
Yes.
hey, we have, this medicine for you.
Yeah.
And obviously it's up to you if you want to like, integrate
And
that or not. Yeah.
yeah. Or embrace it or poo-poo it.
Right.
Though I will say that there have been many a time when I've ignored the spirit animal messages. Um, I get slugs in my house. And when I first moved in, I thought it was just gross. I just have slugs. Now, the slugs have a very important meaning. They have a very important message. Slow down.
Mm-hmm.
And I ignored that for a long time and I paid the price for that. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, these
Yeah.
creatures come into our awareness for a reason. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, granted, you see one, it's probably not a big deal, but if you keep seeing, a particular animal or, whatever, just pay attention,
Right.
figure out what
Yeah.
that's supposed to mean for you.
Yeah. As Robert Moss, he's a dream teacher, would say they're like sidewalk oracles. So it's like instead of doing a divination practice, you're like using your reality as a form of receiving, divine information.
I
So I
love
have an
that.
interest, yeah, I have an interesting thing. So there's an animal that's come into my life. I'm just going to show you my new little paper. Oh, you can't really see it. It's a paperweight. It kind of looks a little trippy like that. But
Is that a
so
chicken?
what's
Is that a
yeah,
chicken?
so
Okay.
chicken, hen, and rooster.
Okay.
So this is not something that's like, oh, it's in public. I've inherited some of my grandmother's statues, right? And things, and I'm starting to, like I would never have chosen to go out and buy like a rooster statue necessarily. But now that I have some of them, I mean, obviously I'm not keeping all of them. I'm like, oh, they're so cute. And like I'm kind of integrating that energy. And so actually I have one near my altar back there as well. And I'm sort of like letting that energy speak to me because when I think about rooster, well, I want to know like what you think about rooster. Because I think about like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm like combining it with peacock, but sort of just like this puffing of the chest or like a posturing energy that I'm like, I don't love that. But not all roosters, that's not all roosters.
Right. When I think of rooster energy, it's funny. The first thing that came to me was like that there's often one rooster and a lot of chickens
Right.
or a lot of hens. And so it was this like little yang energy in a very yin space.
Mm,
And
I like
and
that.
yet, who do you hear? A rooster.
Yeah, but and they're
So,
loud as hell.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So they're like they're doing the pay attention to me thing. And
Right.
you know, and yet they're the one, you know,
Out of, yeah, the
yeah. So
flock.
I mean, that was
Yeah.
just the first thing that kind of came to my mind. And I don't know if that's at all relevant to your world, but um,
Yeah,
yeah.
maybe it is like a splash of like masculine energy kind of helping me balance a lot of like the feminine stuff. I love that. And I hadn't thought about that. I'm gonna look more into like just their biological nature to like, call and all those things. Because again, like this just kind of plopped into my lap, and I'm choosing to integrate it, and I'm choosing to like also just have that piece of my lineage, because that was like such a archetype that my grandma, like, I guess, was trying to embody by collecting roosters and hens, like, there was so much rooster and hen energy.
Interesting.
But also I think of it as kind of like family or familial,
Mhm.
like you said, like I don't know. So yeah. And I think one other point we could touch on is that, animals, animal archetypes, power animals, spirit guides, they can speak to us in our dreams. Like you said, Tina, that your power animal came to you. I do frequently have like dreams with animals, and those are also like speaking to us in those ways. Yeah. And I think sometimes the animals, when they keep showing up and it's in like a particular context, they can be showing up again and again to show you, like, okay, we're working on this thing over and over. Or I think that's sort of like how I see certain animals. And then sometimes I'll get like a new animal and I kind of have to sift and sit with like, what is this? Why is it coming through?
And there's some discernment between, is this a messenger
Right.
versus is it just an animal? Because sometimes it's just an animal. When you see a bunny go across your yard, it's just an animal. If you see 30 of them, okay, there's a message. But even in your dreams, there's discernment between like, there's a dog in my dream now. For those of you who don't know me, I foster dogs. There's always dogs. Like, so for me to dream about dogs is normal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the night that a panther pounced on my bed, I took that as a message. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just a little bit of discernment, whether it's something that truly needs to mean something or if it's just something kind of innocuous.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think for dream symbology, you can take it or leave it with like how deep you want to go, because I do feel like anything in a dream could be symbolic, but you could literally be, you know, trying to like interpret or figure out a dream forever. If you go down every single little path of
Oh
like,
yeah,
what was this and what was that? And so I think even in that context, it's like, well, what stood out to you the most? Was that dog barking in your face and did it terrify you? Or was it just like lingering in the background and you were having a conversation with somebody?
right.
So yeah. So yeah. Is there anything else you feel like would be good to share about?
Um, just a note on like other spirit guides that are not animals.
Hmm.
Because we have a lot of other beings, like you said, we get angel energy and I have um a light being that is one of my guides. Sometimes your guides are ancestors, sometimes they're aliens, sometimes they're, you
Mhm.
just, you know, my feeling is when a guide comes to you, find out what they're, what they're there for, and if it feels like they're there for your highest good, go with that. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have to accept guides that don't feel like they're there for our highest good.
Right. And I think like it does kind of relate to like the maps and the cosmologies and the traditions that we personally relate to. Um, Now granted, like a guide could come that, you're like, whoa, this alien being is here, and I don't work with like the Octurians or the Pleiadians or whatever, but they're here. And then yeah, you have that conversation. But I do think like the practices that we have like really do inform, you know, how deep those relationships go, so because our tradition is very animistic based and it's very earth honoring based, like and I know you do, Tina too, like work with a lot of that animal energy, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, my animal energy's barking right now. So
I can't hear it,
I'm so
so
glad because they're just so disruptive. Yes, you're being very disruptive.
he doesn't care.
He doesn't care. Okay. How did you know it
Yeah.
was Joe? Yeah,
So
Jojo's a loud one.
have you had any other like creatures coming in that you've noticed recently?
Recently, um, recently, the only one I can think of off the top of my head is this little white butterfly. That we get them this time of year, but the reason it resonated with me when I saw it was because way back when before I became a shamanic practitioner, but I was getting sessions, one of
Mhm.
my teachers told me that one of my first dog would come to me as a little white butterfly. So now every
Oh,
time I see the little white butterfly, that's a message from Smudge. So um
oh.
yeah, so I've been seeing a lot of those lately. Again, dog energy in the form of a butterfly.
Hmm.
But, so yeah, that's the one. Like, I'm trying to think of any. Well, I say that we have ants in the house, so I'm gonna say yes, that they're probably giving me a message. Um, yeah, that or they're just saying the dogs are messy and there's food. Um, I don't know yet.
They're like, oh, yum. Yeah.
What about you?
Um,
Anything coming through lately?
the roosters, yes.
Yes.
Mm, I mean, I have like an affinity with large cats, but that's been something for a while. But yeah, I mean, I've had dreams recently. I'm trying to think, like, have I had a dream with an animal recently? But not off the top of my head. Yeah, I mean, as I'm like rearranging my house and changing things, I do feel like some of my like animal guides are becoming more prominent and kind of speaking to me about like where certain things need to be, and where to honor my relationship with them. So, but yeah, I can't think off the top of my head, but
Yeah. My recently in the past month and a half or so, I've been um, called to work with a new deity.
hmm
So it's been less about the animals and more about her. But
hmm
and that happens too sometimes where it's just like you're totally being called to work with some
yeah,
energy. And for me right now, I'm being called to work with a deity that I don't really know much about. So I'm really looking forward to, you know,
yeah,
hearing what it is that she is calling me to work on. So
yeah. I love that. Yay! Well, thank you all for listening to us rant and chat and just do the thing that we always do
do our thing.
anyway. Um, Yeah, and stay tuned for more. Thank you.
Thank you.